So I was introduced to my next guest by my friend Akeem Noack. I always say his name wrong. Brilliant coach, amazing guy that I've known for a short time, but we've become fast friends. And he introduced me to my next guest. And usually when I'm introduced to other people for the podcast, it's with a grain of salt because I have very limited space to have people on the podcast. And, I hate picking and choosing because I meet really fabulous people. So I took the call and I met my next guest. And next thing I know, 45 minutes later, we are just chatting away, talking away. We are kindred spirits. I absolutely fell in love. And I'm like, you know what? You got to be on my podcast. So Debra Olshan-Cooper, who's going to make me fix the name. I'm sorry for you, Akeem. Sorry, Debra, for ruining names. She's a serial entrepreneur with over 30 years in the public relations and marketing. She's the founder and CEO of Your Career Design Lab, which is a premier career coaching firm where they help you craft, tell, and sell your story. So important to really know who you are and to be able to convey to people who you are when you're either trying to raise money, raise capital for a business, or get a new job, or just get an idea across. So this is really good. She's, her writing can be found in the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and the New York Times. She's been on CNN and Good Morning America and The View, and she's all over the place. Debra, thanks for being on the podcast.
Oh, Mark, thanks so much for having me. This is great.
So we have to be careful because, again, you and I just chatted away, and people don't have time for us to just be having a good old time. So we really need to be focused. So you and I, when we talked, you're a career coach. You've been an entrepreneur for a few decades. You look beautiful and amazing, and we're both very young and have decades of experience. And then we started talking about, and I hate this word, but it's being bandied about, the Great Resignation. People are reevaluating who they are, what they want to be when they grow up. They're starting to realize that they have choices. The job market is crazy good. People are leaving the job market and starting businesses. So I think it's an overwhelming time of what should I do? Everybody's leaving their job. Should I leave my job? I'm like, you got a 401k, you got health insurance, you like your job. I'm not sure that that's the thing to do just because everybody's doing it. What are the conversations you're starting to have with people at this time?
It's so interesting, Mark, is that I think there's the COVID. If there's a silver lining to COVID, and I don't mean to disparage anybody who's had family members die or whatever, but there is an underlining silver lining behind this COVID. And that was a really time, as I coined it, although I did see it in the dictionary, called Thinkcubate. And it was a time to really
Thinkcubate,
which was really like marinating on the things as a kid that you were passionate about that just kind of got buried down because you had to support your kids. And I see that a lot of older people that I'm working with now, I actually call them, I just wrote a blog, it's about being bolder, like be older, but in that you can be bolder. And I love that because there's a paradigm that's shifting from, you're right, the 401ks. Look, we all need security, but what about the security that we feel within ourselves?
Right. So hold on. But that's the opposite of general wisdom, because, you can be bold when you're young because you don't have responsibilities. If you want to bankrupt yourself, you can bankrupt yourself and you have plenty of time to fix it. But if you have kids going to college, all that kind of stuff, that whole be bolder thing, I notice getting more cautious. So how do you reconcile that?
You know what? Because when you are really authentic with yourself and what your passion is, it can become your career. You can be even more secure within yourself and your family. What we saw as the outside doesn't necessarily create, if you will, more money or more things for us to be safer. If that makes sense. We've been sort of conditioned, if you will, socially. Right. You've got to do this, and this will bring you what you need in your life. I am telling you that I no longer see that. The people that are stepping out now from that paradigm, from that social milieu, if you will, are doing better things, are more productive than they have ever dreamed they could ever be in their life. I mean, for example, I'm a storyteller, so I have to tell this story, but I was a woman who reached out to me, about 67 years old. Her husband just had died like a month before. She had an estranged daughter, and she was like, what do I do with my life? She had a very successful store on Montana. She actually built visual merchandise, the whole Polo Ralph Lauren store on Rodeo Drive, but she was at a loss. She was very little with money. However, when we started talking about what her passions were or what she was good for, also, and a lot of people on this podcast can relate to that, the resume that they have that they may send out to try to be getting the jobs that they had 15 years ago, well, it's the 30-year-old hiring manager that never heard half the freaking things that somebody was really successful for, if that makes sense. So we had to redo her resume, redo her cover letter to reflect who she still was at her core. She started getting calls left and right from virtual merchandising stores in Beverly Hills and Santa Monica and Brentwood and so on. And also I led her to a person in Malibu who was doing their home. And when I found out that she had lived on a dairy farm. So we took that sensibility of serenity and calmness, and she was able to tell her story to these people, and they hired her immediately. So the point is,
that kind of neutralized ageism there.
it neutralized ageism. It neutralized what she thought about herself. We reframed her thinking from limiting beliefs, which so many of us of our age have. If we're not doing this, if we're not making that kind of money, if we're not sending our skills to the private school, we all grow up with limiting beliefs. It's letting go of that limiting beliefs and believing who you are right now can change your future. So she now has like a $500,000 design job in Malibu that she never thought a month ago she was even capable of. I'm working with a gentleman now who has been a copywriter, a copy editor, worked for the Miami Herald, now became, he's had many careers, and now has been a private jet broker. But his passion has always been about creating. But how did he create? He came up with a story idea, called me. We are now actually in co-production for a television series. It can happen. It's happening right now in this universe that we're in right now. People have to let go of their limiting beliefs, go back to what they believe was their true essence, and go after it.
What's the difference between the new agey follow your bliss, what are you passionate about, and you can make a business out of it and all that stuff, and actually what are you passionate about and you can go make money out of that? Like, where is the delineation in that?
Well, to be honest with you, at your career design lab, I really started, and I still have, a lot of high school kids, college kids, college graduates who go into college not knowing what they want to do and come out even further not knowing what they want to do. And what's really cool today is people's side hustles. Your side hustle can become your career. I was working with a kid who was a Berklee College of Music kid, but his father happens to be like a physical therapist at the Heat. So he's kind of grown up with the Heat people and whatever. And so he came up with this idea during COVID to interview some of the players that were like sitting at their homes in Star Island, like doing nothing. So it's like, hey, what are you doing now? Because you never talk to basketball players off the court. It was always like, how was your game? How many points did you score? So he went and interviewed them. He came up with a thing called MBL, Music Basketball Life, because he loves music. So he'd ask the basketball players what music you listen to, whatever. Long story short, I got him to an ex-William Morris agent. And now they're in production for a reality show of young kids going out and trying to make their life, because we did a little trailer for it. So again, there are jobs out there. There's creation being made right there. And it's just aligning yourself with the creation and making it happen for yourself.
So I'm curious. So I'm sitting in a job, got a 401k, I'm doing well, but I got the itch, right? I'm seeing other people do this, and I want to bet on myself. Yeah. And, but it's overwhelming. It's scary. I got kids, I got things. How do you start to, first of all, figure out if you're the kind of person who can do something like that? And second of all, what's the thought process in finding out what's a whim and what is a really deep-seated desire, passion?
Well, that's a great question, Mark. I mean, similar to the guy that I'm working with now on this movie, I have a program, if you will, where I call it the to-do list. And the to-do list is that moment where you go,
You have to go
Like, oh
slow.
my
You
God.
have to go slower because I don't know what that word. I didn't catch that word.
Okay, it's the ta-da list. Like
Ta-da.
ta-da,
Okay, got it.
ta-da, like revelation time. And I cannot tell you that every time I take people through this, they like literally go, "Oh, I could have had a V8." Remember that commercial? Like, "Oh, why didn't I think of this?" And it kind of goes back into your childhood. Where was that moment that you were sitting in your room, just lost in your flow until your mom called you
So
for
do it
dinner?
with me now.
Okay. So the question would be, Mark, what were you thinking about? What were you doing in your childhood? About what age were you when you were just lost in what you were doing till your mom called you for dinner?
I used to actually, we had the encyclopedia, the World Book Encyclopedia. So I was constantly in the World Book Encyclopedia, but I was also reading books on whales and dolphins. I just, the ocean and whales and dolphins just was everything to me. I knew everything there was to know about whales and dolphins, and anybody could ask me.
That's so cool. So then what happened when you were in high school?
Drugs and alcohol.
Okay. And then what happened? No, seriously. And then, but did that passion, did you ever think about that? Like, did you ever go like to Loom and we're like
So
in
what
the,
I learned was
yeah.
dolphin trainer wasn't really going to be a career path. So oceanographer was a career path.
Hmm.
But I wasn't smart enough. I didn't have the study habits. Like I wanted to be an oceanographer. That's what I wanted to be, but I just didn't have the, later in life, I found out I had ADD, right? Like, and all that stuff and drug and alcohol problems and all that. But I just never thought I could be an oceanographer. That, there was school, there was, you couldn't just play with dolphins. You actually had to learn science.
Right. But that's changed, Mark. That's the whole thing with the internet and all kinds of social media and all online things. You could work for National Geographic and do it. There's so much more. When we went to school, first of all, and then the question I have to ask you is who was there for you to guide you, to be your GPS, to becoming an oceanographer?
Nobody, there was nobody there.
Correct.
Right.
That's the point, right? So thank you for saying that. And that's the point that I'm giving kids today. I like, you want to get there, but there's been nobody in schools, in colleges, and whatever to help you be that. It's like we put on our GPS. We know where the person lives, but sometimes we just want to put on the GPS to just listen to get us there smarter, not harder.
Got
And
it.
it's the
So
same
let's fast
with
forward this though
careers.
to
Yeah,
a 40 or 50-year-old person. We have the
that's
same
correct.
conversation. I always wanted to be an oceanographer. So now I'm thinking of leaving my job. How do we brainstorm? Like that just seems such a. I want to be a rock star. I want to. It just seems so far fetched to actually reach back into my childhood now. So
Okay.
help me
Well,
with that.
yeah, absolutely. Like with this man I just mentioned to you that I'm working with the movies. I happen to have been in, as you mentioned, PR and marketing for over 30 years. So in that time, I worked with every conceivable business from fashion, entertainment, music, you name it, I've worked with it. So once we craft your story, and what I've been doing with this guy is after we decide what your passion is, then I have proverbial questions that I ask people. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And as they go through that process, somebody just told me it's like professional therapy, which it kind of is, because I'm tapping into parts of yourself no one freaking ever asked you. When kids are growing up, we say, what are you doing? What's your GPA? What college are you going to? Nobody ever asks, who are you? I
Hmm.
think if somebody ever asked you, Mark, who are you, wanting to be an oceanographer, and went a little deeper, you might have brought that parts of yourself out that thought you could do that. But
Sure.
going back to that, right, is that's what I do. And then I put them on a path, and then I open doors. I happen to be very lucky to know people in a lot of areas. So then I will open that door for you. And I have opened doors for this man that have gotten us to the producers that are looking for women empowerment movie. And that's just really cool because people don't have doors. When you've been in the same thing for so long, you just think that's your lane. But if you open that door, you'd find there's a lot of lanes that you can go in with
Hmm.
the proper GPS.
This is such an interesting conversation because two things. One, I'm with you on that. Like my passion really does mean something to me. So I got my scuba certification this last year, right? And I have a saltwater fish tank. I have a reef in my living room, so that's become a passion. And I gave that to myself. But I want to go back to
Yeah.
now. Let's think about what did I want to be when I grow up. When I also when I was a little bit older, I wanted to be a rabbi. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be counsel for people. And ironically, I host a podcast where we talk about this kind of stuff. I'm a coach, so I actually spend time with people spiritually, leadership, transformational, all that stuff. So I actually do. I am. In fact, my rabbi called me a rabbi, right? And my son's studying to be a rabbi, so this is all kind of ironic. But you're right. So that's who I was as a kid, because my skills weren't science. My skills is people. So now my whole entire career is that. So actually, you proved your point.
Well, Mark, it's interesting as you're saying that too about being an oceanographer. It's about the vastness of the world, of the ocean.
Mm.
And if you really kind of turn that around, what you're doing is bringing vast wisdom to an ocean of people. And it's kind of that same thing. Do you know what I mean? If you
Nice
turn
metaphor.
it around.
Very nice metaphor.
No, but that's the metaphors is what drives us in life, to be honest with you, when you can make that connection.
So, you asked me, like, when I was a teenager, who was there for me to help me along to see that I could do this. Now I'm a 40 or 50-year-old person. How do, so where do I get my support to actually even think outside the box when I'm spending so much time just trying to, again, the overwhelm of keeping a career, keeping a roof over my kids' heads, right? Saving for college, saving for retirement, keeping the spark in my relationship. Who guides me with that?
Well, you know what? When you put it like that, what's coming up for me is reframing. Why do we have to think like that? That's what keeps us in that limiting thought process, right? I have to do this. I have to do that. And I'm just not a believer in that. I'm a believer in what sparks you, because it all comes from within you. If you feel good about yourself, if you're happy with what you're doing, the world in a way, it's like dharma, right? I'm not trying to get woo-woo, but it's true. The universe will take care of it. But with regard to that, when you think in those terms, then everything just gets limited. And the universe, in a way, can't do what it's supposed to do. So by taking care of yourself and really thinking about what you want to do and where your passion lies, then the world, it really does open up to that.
Again, I'm your case study here, because
Yeah.
I remember when coaching was brought to me.
Yeah.
I was really mad at Alan Cohen invited me to his coaching program. I didn't even know what coaching was. And I told him, I'm a sales guy. Why would I do coaching? He says, and he said, Spirit told me you need to come to my coaching program. This famous author. I was like, that was really cool. I found I was naturally good at it. I loved it. Right. And then I got mad at him and I said, why would you show me what I'm born to do when I can't? I have an ex-wife. I have children. I have elderly parents I take care of. I have responsibilities. Why would you show this to me? Fast forward to, I was coaching with Steve Chandler, the godfather of coaching, and I was still a salesman. And I had made the decision when I had $2 million free and clear in the bank, up over and above all my obligations, then I would switch to coaching. And Steve said, why would you stay in something you hate? And why wouldn't you change now? And subsequently, he fired me as a client because I had a meltdown over that. I had an absolute nervous breakdown over that one comment. I said, look, I take care of my elderly parents. I give this amount of money to my ex-wife and my kids, right? I have these responsibilities. I can't just indulge myself that way. So I went and talked to my ex-wife, and she said, you were born to do this.
That's right.
I trust you. Right. And that's where Byron Katie's, daring greatly. And then she wrote Rising Strong because people dared greatly, then they hit the pavement. So she wrote Rising Strong. So when I became a coach, I had initial success really quickly. And then the whole entrepreneurial journey so I had a few years that were really tough because I didn't know that I was running a business. I was a great coach, but I didn't know I was running a business. And to 8 years later, I'm wildly successful. I'm influential. I'm doing what I want to do. But that meltdown, because the responsibilities and all that, and actually enrolling everybody around me into this was an interesting journey. So
Mark,
I'm thinking you're having these conversations every day.
every day, 5 times, 6 times a day. And what's coming up for me when you speak like that right now is, where's the responsibility for yourself? Where did anybody ever say to you, you're just responsible for yourself early on, right?
Right.
Early on in your childhood. Who are you and how can you be responsible for yourself? This notion that we have to be
It felt
responsible for
so
everyone else.
selfish. It felt so selfish to do what I want to do in rather than what I was supposed to do.
Right. And that's another limiting belief,
Mm-hmm.
because we are all at this age raised on that diet of shame, blame, not good enough, have to do for others, have to be there for others, have to fix things, have to make sure. How can anybody, with your podcast, the way that how you named it, how overwhelmed, how can anybody run their
Mm-hmm.
lives? How can anybody be alive, let alone run their lives with that mindset?
It's crazy.
It's almost impossible.
I have had I'm buried this week. I have been so busy this week, and I ate breakfast, and I was joking with my husband that I was, I'll call him from my commute to the office, which was down the hall. And I was like, he's like, do you have a busy day? I'm like, oh my God, I am jam packed today. And as I'm walking to my office, I'm going, but I love what I do. Oh my God, I love what I do. And I feel guilty about that. Like I don't feel guilty about it, but I can feel that in there.
Mhm.
Like who am I to get paid for what I would do for free all day, every day? Right. It's really that. So as I ask these questions of you, I'm
Yeah,
an advocate of it. I'm a coach for it. I believe in it. But I feel like it's my job to voice the objections that most of us would have and that I had to this life that you're saying we could live.
absolutely. And I'm so glad that you reframed it to feeling grateful. Every day I've been on the same. I've been on like Zoom calls from 9 to 9 at night, like without breathing, and grabbing like a bar or something like that. And I'm like, I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for this. And I brought it. And what people have to start to recognize is that you're bringing it on. That's the universe giving you the abundance of what you've asked for. But you've got to let go of that mindset that it's, somehow you don't deserve it, or somehow it's not for you. Like, can you actually be doing something you love? My father used to
Hmm.
say to me when I was doing searching stuff, and he was a serial entrepreneur, he said, you know what, Debra, find something you love to do, get really great at it, and
Hmm.
the money will come. I
And
have
that's
lived
the
by
second piece. Get really like get
yeah,
really great at it.
correct. Oh yeah, no, you can't do it half-ass for sure, but get really great at it and the money will come. And that has been my motto throughout my life. When I started my PR firm, I started it in a recession when nobody, everybody was telling me I made more money than God that year. Do you know what I mean? And you hear people saying that kind of thing. You just have to believe and go for it, and really go for it. And I say this to your listeners with no doubt. The doubt is what stops us from moving forward. There has to be an overall belief that you can do it, that what you believe in, what you are meant to do, is meant for you, and just going for it.
Yeah, for me, like I still have all that go on in my head, the
Mhm.
doubts, all that stuff. So I surround myself with people who believe in me, right? I surround myself. In fact, right now we're working to build my coaching practice to $1 million a year, right? To take only tens, to take mastering overwhelm, and the one to many thing. And I'm told that the intellectual property that I've created is that sort of thing that could be really make an impact in the world. I don't see it, right? I don't see it, but I've never seen it for myself. Like when I was a successful sales guy, I've never seen it for myself. But I'm surrounded by people who I trust, more than my own perception, right? Who see it for me. And I've made the decision to make them right. Right. So that I always want to help people who have the head trash, right? Because and I'm really grateful that God hasn't taken the head trash away from me. I know not to pay attention to the head trash. I have right sized the head trash. I am not plagued by their head trash, but it's there, so I can talk to people who have that. So having those people around you, like now having someone like you in my life who is an unshakable stand for living your passion, right? Living your zone of genius, that kind of thing. I think that's essential. Listen, so I would follow, I would suggest people follow you around from podcast to podcast so they can get an infusion of you and what you believe, and then make that their belief.
Mark, I love what you just said, but what's coming up for me? It's like where you want to go. But I also feel once you are accountable for yourself, if you can get to that place where Mark feels accountable for Mark, and not looking at the outside, if that's what you need right now, and that's like cool. It's like people hiring me, right? They kind of know where they want to go, but they're not really sure how to get there. So I'm their GPS, just like all the people are for you. It's like, hey, you got a direction. We're on this, we're in the car with you. We're gonna.
Oh no, I've joined the program to do this. I've put the investments where I need.
Yeah,
My money is where my mouth is. I'm 100% committed on this, and if it can happen, it's gonna, I am gonna do everything, no matter how uncomfortable and outside of my comfort zone, because I believe in this. Right? You believe.
that's right.
Your whole thing is that you're not trapped. You're free, and you can have the career that fills you. Right? That's your mission in life, is to let people know that. My mission in life is to let people know that their overwhelm is between their ears, that
That's
they're
right.
free, that they've always been free, right? And that peace and beauty in life is available to you. I am committed to that, right? So the head trash just goes off by the wayside, because that's our mission.
That's right.
It's bigger than all of that. Curiosity.
Yeah.
What book do you give away?
Oh my God. There's so many books. In fact, it's funny you say that. I give away books all the time, and then I get really pissed because then when I'm looking for them, I'm like, who did I give them to?
But which book do you, for this journey, which book do you like to recommend?
Well, right now, The Untethered Soul.
She's holding up Michael Singer's Untethered Soul. Absolutely exquisite book. His description of God is the most beautiful I've ever heard in the last third of the book. Question: why? Because you're a career coach. Why the Untethered Soul?
Because there are layers to all of us, right? And the deeper we can go into our soul is where we find our soul's purpose.
Mm.
And that's really it. And I love the subline here, the journey beyond yourself. Yeah. I want to constantly see what the journey is behind the layers of dirt and mud and whatever that we've all grown up with, because I believe there's a path out there that everyone is deserving of being on.
Wow, an exquisite and unexpected suggestion. It's funny. I was speaking to a group just the other day, and one of the women was, going through the whole only tens thing, and she's like, "How do I know what I really have juice for and I'm passionate for, and what I should be doing, and how do I decipher my to-do list and all this stuff?" And she's not breathing, and she's like, totally, And I said, "Do you have a contemplation practice?" And she's, "What's a contemplation practice?" I said, "Do you ever sit and just breathe?" No. Right? Do you ever journal? No. So we started to explain, what a contemplation practice is, and it doesn't have to be meditation. But until you meet yourself, until you can be alone with yourself, you can't decipher your to-do list. You can't decipher what you really want. So you suggesting the untethered soul is exactly right. In order to know where you want to go, you need to know who you are. In order to know who you are, you need to be able to sit with yourself for a little while.
Mark, that's exactly right. And when we were talking about the to-do list, it really is coming up with the notion of who are you? Who are you? I was at like an accelerator camp thing called Startup Island. It's amazing.
Oh, that's
like
fun.
These kids that are, it's really cool. And I really talked about actually a topic called how to shift your shit, how to lose the bull and gain the fulfillment of your life. And so I had all these kids around me, probably about 20 to about 37. And I'd go, so who are you? So-and-so. Well, I just graduated from Cornell and I'm in a startup and I've just raised $2 million. Who are you? Let's say I'm a girlfriend to so-and-so, a daughter to so-and-so. Who are you? By the fourth, who are you? Tears were going, I don't know. And I started to cry, and everybody at the table cried, because why isn't anyone, when we're younger, asking that question?
Mm.
Why does it take us to our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, like you were just saying with this woman, to ask that freaking question? And then, of course, we're not going to have the answers to it because we never did the homework on it.
That's why this whole COVID, the last few years have really forced people
Yes.
to reevaluate. That's why I talk about midlife. The last podcast was mastering midlife. The midlife crisis is a time to take stock. I think COVID and everything that's happened really forced people into that midlife mindset of, wait a second, life is short. Things are, we're not as safe as we think we are. Things aren't as stable as we think. What do I want to do with whatever days I have left?
That's exactly right.
It's such a hard thing to do. So my guess is people are going to want more of you. People are going to want your counsel and your suggestions. How do they find you?
Oh, well, they can find me easily. They could go to my website, which is www.yourcareerdesignlab.com. They can reach out to me at info@yourcareerdesignlab.com. I actually have a lot of free content on there. I actually have an ebook of the to-do list. So it might get people started on thinking about what we're discussing today on this podcast, Mark.
Right. And we're going to put all that in the show notes so you don't have to figure out how to spell all of that. Is to-da with two D's or an H? Or
so it's like T-A-D-A. Really easy. I make it really easy because we don't need any more hard stuff in our lives.
But no, we'll put all that in the show notes so people can just click on it, especially if you're driving. Debra, thank you so much for being on the show. Your spirit is just ridiculously infectious. You make me believe that I can do anything and that it's all possible, which is, the kind of person you want in your life. So I suggest you go find more of Debra so you can have her in your life. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Mark. Wish you all the best, and everyone listening, get on your journey. Life is too short.
Yes. And to everybody else, thank you so much for your precious time and attention. I love you a ton. Have a great rest of the day.